In the city of Medina, after years of thunderous victories, the man once known as Saifullah, the sword of Allah, walked as a simple believer. Khalid bin Waleed, the conqueror of Roman and Persian Empire, no longer commanded battalion. He no longer carried the burden of banners. Khalifa Umar bin Khattab had removed him from military command, not because of failure, as Khalid never tasted defeat in his entire life, but to remind the world that Islam victories belong not to man, but to Allah alone. Khalid accepted this decision with silence and humility. A man who had shattered empires now spent his days in prayer, teaching, and living like the poorest among the people. There was no bitterness in his heart, only submission to the will of Allah. Yet, the people of Medina whispered in sorrow, how could such a warrior be left aside? Some wept openly, for they had seen with their own eyes how Khalid's presence on the battlefield had turned despair into hope and fear into courage. After his removal from the army, Khalid bin Waleed did not return to the luxury of palaces or the pride of soldiers. Instead, he chose to live a humble life in Amasa, Syria. This was the city where many of his campaigns had been directed, and where people loved him deeply for both his victories and his justice. There he spent his days quietly, praying, teaching, and living like an ordinary believer. Even though every scar on his body told the story of empires he had brought down, he never complained about his removal. Whenever people asked, he would simply say, I fought for the Allah and His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, not for Umar, not for leadership. If today I am only one among the Muslims, then this is an honor for me. But Khalid bin Waleed was not forgotten. His very humility became a lesson. Children sat at his feet to hear stories of courage. Young men came to him for advice, not about war, but about faith and patience. He never reminded them of his victories, nor did he boast of his titles. Instead, he spoke of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of prayers in night. In the final days of his life, the house of Khalid bin Waleed was filled with visitors. People of Medina came one after another to see the great warrior who once struck fear into empires, now lying weak upon his bed. His eyes still shone with fire, but his body had grown fragile. One of Khalid's closest friends entered, bowed in respect, and sat beside him. Khalid's voice was heavy, filled with both pride and sorrow. He said, Look at me. There is not a place on this body without the scar of a sword or the wound of a spear. I fought in so many battles. I would enter the enemy's rank alone seeking murder, but Allah did not will it for me. And today, here I am, dying on my bed like an old camel. The man looked at him with sorrow, then replied, You could not be murdered, O Khalid, because you are the sword of Allah, and the sword of Allah is never broken by man in battle. Allah Himself only takes it back when He wills. A silence filled the room. Khalid closed his eyes and a tear rolled down his face. For a moment, the great commander who had broken nations felt peace his entire life. Every wound, every charge into the enemy, every cry of Allahu Akbar on the battlefield was not in vain. He was not dying as a common man. He was returning as the sword of Allah, finally at rest. In a Massa, when the soul of Khalid bin Waleed finally departed, the earth felt heavier. His body, covered in the scars of battle, was wrapped and prepared for burial. His final will was honored. His sword, his horse, and his servant were set aside to be sent to Medina to Amirul Mu'minin Umar bin Khattab. But when the news reached Medina, the city was shaken. People filled the street in grief. From every house, from every corner, cries could be heard. Men wept like children. Women raised their voices, and the city mourned as if a shield had been ripped away from them. The conqueror of Rome armies, the breaker of Persia, the man who had never known defeat, Khalid bin Waleed, was gone. Hazrat Umar heard the cries. He stepped out of his house, his face turned yet heavy with emotion. Umar had always forbidden excessive wailing and loud crying over the dead. For Islam teaches patience, he called out, "What is this noise? Why are the people crying in this way? Did I not forbid this?" A man stepped forward, tears still wept upon his face, and answered, "O Amirul Mu'minin, today they weep not for an ordinary man, they weep for Khalid, the sword of Allah. How can the people hold their grief when the protector of the Ummah has been taken?" At that very moment, Umar's sickness broke. His eyes filled with tears and his voice trembled. He said softly, "Let them cry." And Umar himself wept openly, his tears flowing as the people around him sobbed. The Khalifa, who had once removed Khalid from command, now stood among the mourners. As per the will of Khalid bin Waleed, his belonging was to be sent to Khalifa Umar bin Khattab. When Hazrat Umar received them, his eyes filled with tears. He wept openly and said, "Khalid has left this world with nothing but his sword, his horse, and his servant. This is the true legacy of the sword of Allah. Woman will never give birth to a man like Khalid again." The street of Medina remained filled with sorrow for days. People spoke of Khalid's courage, his humility, and his sacrifice. And though his body rested in Syria, his spirit lived on in the hearts of the believers. Years passed after the death of Khalid bin Waleed, yet his memory never left the heart of Amirul Mu'minin Umar bin Khattab. One day, Umar sat with a poet among his companions. The gathering was quiet and Umar's face was heavy with remembrance. He turned to the poet and said, "Recite for me some verses. Recite for me about my commander, about Khalid bin Waleed." The poet began. His word painted pictures of battle, of Khalid's sword flashing like lightning, of armies crumbling before his courage. But as the verses continued, Umar's eyes filled with tears. He raised his hand suddenly and interrupted him. "O poet, stop. Your poetry is not enough to describe Khalid's greatness. No words can weigh what his sword has done. No line can hold the courage of that man." Silence fell over the gathering. Umar lowered his head, his voice trembling as he added, "By Allah, woman will never give birth to one like Khalid again." The people around him wept. They understood that for Umar, Khalid was not just a commander. He was the sword of Allah, a hero whose courage no poem, no words could ever truly capture. And so ended the life of Khalid bin Waleed, the sword of Allah, a warrior who left this world with nothing but his faith, his sword, and his scars. His legacy still echoes through history. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories from the golden age of Islam.